What if the death of God wasn't the end of belief, but the beginning of something far more dangerous? In the late 19th century, amidst the crumbling cathedrals of tradition and the rise of scientific reason, a lone philosopher whispered a truth so profound and disturbing, it still echoes through time. God is dead, and we have killed him. These words weren't an attack on religion. They were a funeral hymn for the world's deepest certainties. Friedrich Nietzsche, a man misunderstood by generations, was not simply proclaiming atheism. He was warning us, not about the absence of God, but about the spiritual void that would follow. A vacuum where old meaning collapses and something darker, something far more chaotic begins to rise. What did Nietzsche really mean? Was he revealing the secret truth hidden behind centuries of blind faith? Or was he sounding the alarm that without the sacred, humanity itself would descend into madness? This is not just a philosophical idea, it's a metaphysical storm still raging beneath modern society. The crisis of meaning, the collapse of morality, the rise of nihilism, the hunger for something real in an age where the sacred has been sold. And yet, what if Nietzsche's death of God was never about the divine perishing, but about humanity shedding an illusion, so it might find the God within? Tonight, we'll uncover what Nietzsche really meant, and what most people are too afraid to see. You'll discover ancient echoes of this death in mystery schools, sacred texts, and forgotten prophecies. And you'll learn why, to truly awaken, one must face the abyss and walk through it. So stay with me, because once we cross this threshold, there is no going back. Before Nietzsche ever penned the words "God is dead," the world was already cracking beneath the weight of its own illusions. To understand the gravity of his revelation, we must first understand the era he was born into, and the sacred archetypes he was dismantling. The 19th century was a time of radical transition. The Industrial Revolution had shattered traditional ways of life. Science was dethroning centuries of religious dogma. Darwin had just revealed that humans might be descendants of apes, not children of God. And in this shifting, chaotic world, Friedrich Nietzsche emerged, not as a destroyer, but as a seer. Raised in a deeply Christian household, Nietzsche was intimately familiar with the language of scripture and morality. But he saw something most did not. He saw that belief in God had become a hollow ritual, a lifeless habit clung to out of fear, not devotion. And so, in his prophetic style, he declared the unthinkable. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. But this wasn't a celebration, it was a lament. In his famous work, The Gay Science, Nietzsche speaks through a madman who runs into the town square with a lantern in the daylight, screaming that God is gone and no one understands what it means. The people laugh at him, but the madman isn't insane, he's the only one awake. Nietzsche wasn't saying God, the ultimate source of meaning, no longer existed. He was saying that our collective belief in a transcendent order had died, and no one was prepared for the consequences. Without a divine framework, who decides what's right and wrong? What replaces sacred truth in a godless world? This was the core of Nietzsche's terror. Not that humans had freed themselves from illusion, but that they would replace it with nothing. Nihilism. A spiritual death. A world where values mean nothing, where truth is subjective, and where man becomes a machine with no soul. But herein lies the mystical twist. Nietzsche wasn't advocating for despair. He was testing humanity. He believed that only when the old gods fall can we begin to awaken the inner god, the Übermensch, the higher self capable of creating new values rooted not in dogma, but in conscious will. This wasn't atheism, it was alchemy. Much like the ancient Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. Nietzsche was echoing what mystics had long known, that divinity must be reborn within, once it is stripped of falsehood. And just like the initiates of Egyptian temples or the seekers in Eleusinian mysteries, Nietzsche believed that death, even the death of God, was only the beginning of transformation. Imagine standing at the edge of a great chasm. Below you, Nothing but the abyss. No doctrine, no savior, no sky father watching over you, only silence. And within that silence, a question. If God is dead, who are you now? Nietzsche was not simply erasing God. He was daring us to become something greater in the absence of an authority above. He wasn't the executioner of the divine. He was the midwife to a dangerous rebirth of the human spirit. To fully grasp what he meant, we must explore three mystical truths that lie hidden beneath his bold statement. 1. The collapse of the external God. In ancient times, the gods walked with men. Every force of nature was divine. Rivers were goddesses. Storms were gods. The world was alive with meaning. Then monotheism centralized the divine, one omnipotent God above all, judging and watching. But over centuries, that God became less a mystery and more a moral policeman, locked within books and temples. Nietzsche saw that the external image of God, as a bearded man in the sky, was no longer sustaining the soul. Science had explained the stars, psychology had explained the mind, and God had become redundant. So he declared it. God is dead, not because divinity never existed, but because our idea of it had grown hollow and lifeless. And yet, like any alchemical process, destruction is only the first step. 2. The abyss of nihilism. When the old gods fall, the soul enters a dark night. Nietzsche knew that without something higher to live for, humans would face an existential vacuum. This is the true danger of his message, not the absence of belief, but the collapse of meaning itself. He called this nihilism, a condition where nothing is sacred and all values are arbitrary. And like ancient initiates who had to die symbolically before being reborn, Nietzsche believed humanity had to pass through this darkness. He once wrote, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." This is not just philosophy. It is initiation. It is the same journey carved into the mystery schools of Egypt, where seekers pass through symbolic death to emerge enlightened. But how many today stare into the abyss and fall? How many replace the divine not with the soul, but with addiction, distraction, and artificial gods made of money and fame? This is the test Nietzsche warned us about, and few realize it's still happening. 3. The birth of the Übermensch, the inner God. In place of the dead God, Nietzsche envisioned a new being, the Übermensch, or Overman. This was not a tyrant, not a superhuman, but rather a spiritually awakened human who creates new meaning from within. One who lives by self-created values, not inherited rules. A master of himself, a divine spark incarnate. He wrote, "Man is something that shall be overcome." This was not meant to devalue humanity, but to elevate it. Like the alchemists turning lead into gold, Nietzsche believed the soul could refine itself into a higher form, one no longer bound by fear or tradition. In essence, Nietzsche was not destroying God. He was challenging us to become godlike. And this, perhaps, is why his truth is so deadly, because it requires responsibility, courage, and consciousness in a world that prefers to be led. What if Nietzsche's God is dead wasn't a declaration of atheism, but a prophecy, a spiritual earthquake meant to tear away illusion and reveal a forgotten path, one hidden in the very soul of humankind? Because here's the forbidden truth. Nietzsche was not against God. He was against false gods. He was against the God made in man's image, the one used to enslave minds, enforce obedience, and kill individuality in the name of morality. Let's explore three powerful layers of hidden meaning that most overlook. 1. Slave morality versus master morality. The inner war. In one of his most explosive ideas, Nietzsche claimed that our moral systems, especially those shaped by religion, didn't arise from spiritual truth, but from psychological weakness. He described two forces, master morality and slave morality. Master morality was the virtue of creators, those who lived boldly, shaping reality by their will. They valued strength, beauty, truth, and excellence. Slave morality was born from resentment, where weakness became good and strength became evil. It inverted values to justify victimhood. Nietzsche believed that religions, especially Christianity, had embedded slave morality deep into Western culture. Suffering became a virtue. Humility replaced power. Obedience became holiness. But in doing so, something was lost, the divine fire of self-becoming. His warning was not to reject compassion or ethics, but to beware of systems that crippled the spirit under the mask of righteousness. This wasn't an attack on the divine. It was a call to reclaim your sovereignty. 2. The eternal return, a cosmic test of will. Imagine this. Every moment you live, every word you speak, every mistake and triumph you make, you must live again and again for eternity. This was Nietzsche's concept of the eternal return, a mystical, terrifying idea that forces you to confront your life with absolute presence. What if a demon crept after you into your loneliest loneliness and said, "This life as you now live it, you will have to live again and again"? Would you curse him or bless him as a god? It's not about reincarnation, it's about conscious living. Nietzsche was not just a philosopher, he was an esoteric initiator, forcing the seeker to ask, am I living a life worth repeating forever? Do I walk my own path or merely follow? Have I killed the false gods within me? The eternal return becomes the philosopher's stone of his teachings, a test of your values, your will, and your spirit. 3. Beyond good and evil, the alchemy of shadow. Nietzsche's final gift, one many fear to touch, is the idea that true awakening lies beyond the duality of good and evil. He saw these labels as man-made prisons, often used to manipulate. Instead, he urged the seeker to transcend binary thinking, to embrace complexity, to integrate shadow. You must still have chaos in yourself to give birth to a dancing star. This is pure Hermeticism, alchemy, the union of opposites to create something divine. In psychological terms, he was centuries ahead, predicting what Jung would later explore as the individuation process, the confrontation with shadow, the reclaiming of suppressed parts of the psyche. Nietzsche knew, only by facing your darkness can you find your light. And that's why his truths are feared. They don't comfort, they ignite. They demand transformation. In a world where many seek salvation outside themselves, Nietzsche pointed within, toward a sacred fire few dare to touch. But those who do, those who endure the abyss, reclaim their will and rise beyond duality, become more than human. They become creators of meaning. They become initiates of the divine within. They become gods in the making. In the end, Nietzsche didn't truly kill God. He dismantled an illusion. He shattered the porcelain mask humanity had placed over the divine. He exposed the rot behind blind obedience, and in doing so, revealed a deeper mystery. The God Nietzsche declared dead was never the source of creation. It was the idol we built from fear, guilt, and submission. And when he cried, "God is dead and we have killed him," he wasn't mocking faiths. He was mourning what we had lost, authentic connection to the divine spark within. Nietzsche's truth wasn't deadly because it destroyed. It was deadly because it liberated. It burned away comfort, leaving behind raw truth. And in that fire, he dared you to rise, like a phoenix from the ashes of dogma. This is not a philosophy for the faint of heart. It is the path of the seeker, the mystic, the rebel soul. It whispers to those who sense there is something more, beyond the veil of religion, beyond the binaries of right and wrong, into the sacred realm where chaos births stars and truth demands your transformation. So I ask you now, are you ready to look beyond the illusion? To become your own creator? to awaken the divine not outside but within. If this message stirred something deep inside you, then share it. Comment your thoughts and join me as we unlock the hidden mysteries that were never truly lost, only forgotten.